Hello everyone, welcome to Straight Talks F1. Yeah, it's been a while since the season got over, and a lot of the fizz out of the events that happened in Abu Dhabi and Qatar, it's basically gone away. They were superbly happening. Qatar, honestly, the first half of that race was rather boring, but then it entered a mirror dimension, and it all changed. Verstappen and Russell clashing together, then it carried over to Abu Dhabi. Their war of words and it felt like they would crash together in Abu Dhabi. They qualified rather close to each other, but it was eventually Oscar Piastri, of all people, Oscar Piastri, who crashed with Verstappen. Those two haven't clashed with each other a lot on track in the 2 seasons that Oscar has been in F1. But yeah, that was quite the crash at the race start. No one expected it, and it spiraled down McLaren's hopes of winning the constructors. Because with Lando Norris on pole, there is no guarantee they can win the race. He still did a good job, an excellent job, I would say, to win that race and ensure McLaren win the constructors. But the way that race was panning out, Charles Leclerc making his way through the field, it felt like Piastri's spin gave Ferrari a lifeline, and it was just to be. It was just to be. Had Sainz been able to take that lead, the entire complexion of that championship fight would have changed. Ferrari could have won the world championship. But yeah, it wasn't to be. And I'm going to particularly talk about Verstappen versus Piastri rather than focusing on Ferrari's loss. Because yeah, it's happened. Ferrari have lost championship by only 14 points. But there's not much to discuss about that. Instead, we have got an exciting prospect on hand. Everyone is saying that Lando Norris is going to be the leading contender for the 2025 world title. I would say no. The amount of mistakes he has made and the way Oscar Piastri has been improving, the Aussie might just step up. I won't be surprised if Piastri takes the world championship in his third year itself. So that incident between Verstappen and Piastri, that could be a teaser for 2025. Yes, Hamilton going to Ferrari, there's a lot of anticipation around it, and there should be. It is a big deal, it is a huge deal, and it also sort of threatens Verstappen's supremacy because he will have competition. Ferrari are on top, and if Hamilton is driving that car, there's no doubt that Verstappen will have competition at the front. So I'm going to talk about that, mainly Piastri being the leading contender. That's what I feel. With McLaren being the benchmark, Oscar Piastri could just outshine Norris. And there is, of course, the now controversial decision about Liam Lawson getting the Red Bull seat. There had been discussions about Sonoda being in contention, but they weren't really considering him seriously. On merit, Yuki Tsunoda should get that seat. Even now that Lawson has got it, I would say Sonoda deserves it fully. But Red Bull doesn't think that. For some or the other reason, and mainly off track reasons, I would say, which may not be as influential to his performance. But yeah, Red Bull haven't considered Sonoda worthy of being Verstappen's teammate. So Liam Lawson has got a litmus test on hand, both on and off the track. So I'll talk about that and why Lawson deserves it. I have some viewpoints about that because people are really making a fuss about it. I do believe Sonoda deserved it, but from Lawson's perspective, there are some valid points. So yeah, let's get into it. Starting with Verstappen versus Piastri, which could be an epic title battle in 2025. Now, everybody feels that Norris is going to be the leading championship contender. There is a notion that McLaren will dominate 2025. And yeah, that is a very likely possibility. But yeah, looking at how Lando Norris has performed this year, the mistakes he has made, his poor race starts, the amount of wins he left on the table, I've gone about that like a broken record. Sure, he will be at the front fighting for wins in 25, but I don't think that he could build up a consistent championship challenge to Verstappen or anybody who would be at the front, like Leclerc or Hamilton, with Ferrari being at the top. I do feel that Oscar Piastri might take that step up. He's improved a lot since last season. Like, mind you, it's been only 2 seasons for him in F1, and the amount of improvement he has shown, it's staggering. And if he can polish himself going into 2025, yes, a title challenge for him is on. I don't understand why people are hyping Norris up so much because the abundance of mistakes he's made in 24, he needs to take a huge step up. And just compare Norris with Piastri. Norris has spent 5-6 years in F1. 2025 will be 7th season. Piastri will enter his 3rd season only. So if those two are on equal terms, that speaks volumes about Piastri's talent. And Norris will learn, but the way Piastri has challenged him, be it Hungary, be it Italy, he was flawless in Baku while Norris made mistakes and he had to climb back through the field. And these are just 3 races I'm mentioning off the top of my head. There are multiple such races where Piastri has done well. Yes, he hasn't been consistent, fair enough. He's dropped points, and that's the reason he finished 4th in the championship. But if he can polish himself up, Norris will face that intra-team battle next season. Like, he is a talent who's taken junior formulas by storm. Now he's got a top car underneath him. He's showing that improvement. He's showing that skill. It is just about putting it together and putting together consistent season. And yeah, sure, this might seem quite biased towards Piastri. Yes, it is biased. But again, going back to their comparison, Norris 6 years in F1 and the amount of mistakes he made compared to Piastri in his sophomore season, his 2nd year, and the amount of mistakes he made, it gives a clear picture of who's the better talent. Norris is a solid driver, but I don't know if he's the one who could win multiple championships. He had the fastest car for the majority of the year, and he just dropped the ball. Verstappen himself said that he could have easily won the championship in that car, with several races to spare. And that's true, that's a fact. Oscar Piastri is that level of talent. He is a Max Verstappen beat, I would say. He can beat Verstappen on his day. He's shown that level of talent. And that Abu Dhabi collision again, it was a racing incident mainly. Yes, Verstappen was penalized. Maybe it was his fault to some extent. But that sort of hinted at a fight between them that could develop in 25. They had some disagreement on the radio. Later, Verstappen apologized. They sorted it out. Like, Verstappen himself knows that Oscar is a capable driver who can take the fight to him. If he can flourish in 25 and Verstappen, there's no guarantee Red Bull will give him a top dominant car. It could blossom into a superb title fight. And I'm up for it. This may seem biased that I'm keeping Norris out of that title fight, but I feel Verstappen and Piastri are those two equal drivers who could give us a proper modern day title fight. I would really like Leclerc to be that driver, but there's no guarantee how competitive Ferrari can be. Every year they flatter to deceive, do well in testing, and then there is some issue that arises which sort of handicaps them. This season, if they did not have the mid-season slump, I am sure Leclerc could have fought for the title. But yeah, let's see, that's a different discussion altogether now. For McLaren and Piastri, I am feeling very optimistic. And Piastri fighting Verstappen for the title in 25 will also justify why they were not looking to prioritize Norris and completely make Piastri a number 2 this year. Piastri is not a number 2 driver. He is not a driver who McLaren can just make a wingman and say that support Lando Norris. Firstly, Lando Norris is not a completely number 1 driver. He's not a dominant driver like Verstappen. Yeah, he's got the fastest car, he can do a great job, bring the glory home, but he had the fastest car in 24 for a long part of the season, and we saw he only won 4 races. He could have won at least 8 to 9 races. Verstappen in a subpar car, which was dominant at the start of the season, where his 7 wins came, but he was still able to win 2 races late on. Imagine if Verstappen was in the McLaren or in the McLaren level car, the amount of races he would have won. He would have at least won 5 to 6 races in that second half of the season. At least 6 races. So yeah, I do feel Oscar Piastri can take that fight. He can level up to Verstappen, and even Verstappen would cherish that sort of opponent. Relative to Norris, who was very passive this year. So let's see if it materializes or not. I do feel Verstappen versus Piastri will be the 2025 title fight. But then Ferrari had the wild cards as well, so that will obviously further spice things up or change my prediction completely, depending on how competitive Charles Leclerc is. Now, Red Bull finally sacked Sergio Perez, and they have announced after a lot of deliberation that Liam Lawson will replace him. Now, this has become a controversial decision because I don't know why. Honestly, Liam Lawson is a driver backed by Red Bull. They know his talent, proven his mettle in multiple categories. He's done well in F2, he's done well in Super Formula, he's done well in DTM, and then he's done 11 races in F1 to give a decent enough audition of what his ability can be. Surely, Tsunoda deserved it. You definitely got a feel for Yuki Tsunoda. Like, he was the man who's been doing the best job at Toro Rosso or RB or Alpha Tauri Racing Bulls, whatever you call it, the Faenza based team. Tsunoda has been doing that job. He's done well. He's beaten Ricardo, he's beaten De Vries. He got the better of Lawson in qualifying as well in the 6 races they raced together. But again, Red Bull wasn't considering him seriously. I don't understand the hate towards Lawson. I mean, like, social media has got a tendency to overreact to everything and just villainize the other person if someone misses out on something. And Lawson is definitely being villainized. Now, Sunoda's perspective, 4 seasons in F1, 80 odd starts, he scored points, he's done superbly well. Absolutely, he deserved it. They should have ideally given him the chance 1 season at Red Bull, besides Verstappen. If he can't take the pressure, they replace him for 26. Lawson, meanwhile, could have raced at RB, but they weren't considering him. They had that notion about him being immature, his tendency to get angry. There are several of those things. His behavior, his demeanor, and I'm not suggesting that that's something that would have absolutely denied him the seat. Even Red Bull aren't being clear on it. But yeah, from Lawson's perspective, he deserves that seat justifiedly. He had been sitting on the bench for 2 seasons after graduating from F2. Last year, he got those 5 races luckily because of Ricardo's injury. And then this year, obviously, they replaced Ricardo and he got those 6 races to prove himself. But if not for that, Red Bull were just going to lose Lawson. He had a contract and he could have gone elsewhere. That's a different thing that he did not have anywhere else to go. He deserved a seat this season itself when Ricardo got the contract for 24 and he was clearly struggling. Ricardo is definitely past it. He was past it. But he still made a comeback. They had that trust on him that he could potentially make a comeback to Red Bull, replacing Perez. Ideally, 2024 should have been Lawson and Tsunoda at RB. And now that Ricardo has failed, people are still trying to justify him that he was good enough, and Lawson has become the villain. So I don't understand that despite being a good talent and despite deserving that seat and sitting on the sidelines for 2 years, he's the one who's catching all the shrapnel. Many are saying that he could fail like Albon and Gasly. And yeah, that could very well be the case, fair enough. But the tendency to pass judgment even before he is raced for Red Bull, I mean, social media really needs to dial down its expert opinions. Every time they'll do the same thing. They'll just call it before things happen, and at times it backfires in their face. And from Lawson's perspective, again, I said he had been rotting on the sidelines for 2 seasons. And similar to Lawson, there have been many drivers who haven't got a seat in F1. Theo Pocher, Felipe Dragovic, these have been F2 champions and they are without a seat. I mean, Yuki Tsunoda at least had a seat for 4 seasons. 4 consecutive years he's raced in F1, and surely he deserved the promotion. He deserved that promotion to Red Bull, no denying that. But that doesn't mean the likes of Lawson, Pocher, and Dragovic don't deserve a seat. Lawson has somehow earned it, but Dragovic and Pocher, who have won F2, are out on the sidelines and they have to now go to other racing categories. And then you have this year's F2 champion, Gabriel Bortoleto, who's going to make his debut next year. Sure, he's won it in his rookie season. Porsche and Dragovic are decent talents. They are very good racing drivers. They have shown the pace and they can cut it at the top level of motorsport. They have shown the pace, they have shown the potential to belong at the pinnacle of motorsport. Like, I don't understand one thing, that the likes of Dragovic and Porsche haven't got seats, and Lance Stroll has a seat, who's been performing rather badly. Frederick Vesti is another name, runner up to Porsche last year. He also deserves a shot. So Tsunoda, on one hand, sure, he should feel bad that he did not get that Red Bull promotion. He deserved it. But on the other hand, he can also be grateful that he's raced in F1 for 4 years, while champions like Dragovic, Porsche, runner-ups like Frederick Vesti, Callum Ilott, he was making a lot of noise in 2020, finishing second to Mick Schumacher. Robert Schwartzman as well. He is a solid talent. But now those guys have to drive an IndyCar, which is not a bad gig. But they have to give up on the F1 dream. And then there have been drivers like Logan Sargent, Nikita Mazepin, Nicholas Latifi, Mick Schumacher, who have raced in F1 probably more than they deserve. They have been so crash prone, haven't done anything special as such. And then these drivers I mentioned, Schwartzman, Ilott, Dragovic, Porsche, they haven't even got a single chance. But that's how cutthroat the world of F1 has been. And Lawson has somehow escaped that matrix. Like, mind you, he doesn't have any major backing. Tsunoda has got a big backing from Honda. And Lawson has got sponsors as well, but they aren't as big as Honda. His parents literally sold their house to fund his racing. He comes from Hastings in New Zealand, which is a very small city. Like, people don't even consider New Zealand often. It's an afterthought of a country, and he's come a long way from there. Like, he only started getting sponsors in recent years after he started getting the spotlight in junior formulas. Like Rodin, Giltrap, Turner, Sporter. These aren't big sponsor names. But yeah, sure, he'll be villainized for replacing the likes of Perez and Ricardo, who have been basically fan favorites. But they have struggled a lot, and that's something people have just ignored. Not so much for Perez. Yes, there has been a lot of scrutiny and criticism against him, but Ricardo people feel that he was damn good, and he clearly wasn't in the last 4 years. He knew that. I know people may feel that Lawson may struggle, but if he does well, that would be one of the most celebrated stories in F1 history. There hasn't been a Kiwi race winner, so it would be a hugely proud moment for New Zealand motorsport, to see Liam Lawson doing well in F1. Now, Verstappen and Russell really took their rivalry to the next level. They gave us a teaser in 2023 in Baku after their crash in the sprint race, but that was just a teaser of the potential of this duo. Like, Russell is certainly the villain of F1. He loves to be dramatic, he always spices things up. He's not one to shy away to take on any driver, has that diplomatic tone, and that can be annoying, and he sort of reportedly instigated for Verstappen's grid penalty in Qatar. A one place grid drop, a very unusual one, for an incident that wasn't impeding as such. But it wasn't surprising to hear that Russell may have instigated Verstappen's penalty. He's a driver, he's the type of individual who could do something like that. And it was a miracle that they did not crash, locking out the front row besides each other. Verstappen would have been angry to start from second despite getting pole, and especially that he had got the championship in his bag. I thought they could easily crash. Verstappen had nothing to lose, and he's no slouch. He's not innocent as well. He expressed his feelings candidly about Russell, and Russell hit back in Abu Dhabi. So that was fun to witness that war of words. They were taking jibes at each other left, right, and center. But yeah, it was a tense situation, and Russell seems to have taken it personally. Like, time will tell if he's got a car good enough to fight Verstappen. If Mercedes can do that, George Russell is going to eke out every inch of performance in that car to take the fight to Verstappen. And we could have an epic title battle between them. And that could, of course, make it a three-way battle. Piastri at McLaren, Verstappen at Red Bull, Russell at Mercedes. And there are multiple championship contenders there with if Ferrari also come in. So George Russell being competitive in 2025 and having that equation with Verstappen, it is just going to spice things up even more. That could be a title battle for the ages. And particularly between Verstappen and Russell, the off track banter and the off track war of words. There will be a war of words for sure from what we have seen in Qatar and Abu Dhabi. That would be quite interesting to watch. And I don't mind Russell winning a championship. I don't mind Russell challenging Verstappen for the title. He's a much, much, much better driver than Lando Norris. And he'll put up a much better fight than Norris as well. Now, Qatar was a boring race for the first half of it, as I said. Then it entered a mirror dimension and everything changed. It's definitely a reference to Albon's mirror breaking off and causing a whole lot of chaos to spice up the Qatar GP. I think it was the mirror that gave punctures to Sainz and Hamilton. I don't think there was any other debris on the track that could have given those punctures. It was Silverstone 2020 all over again. And to further make things complex, the FIA, the race control, did not go for a safety car right away. There is a mirror on the track, in the middle of the track, on the main straight, and there is no safety car for about half a lap. Everything was going bonkers, and it was bound to have a surprise result. But the biggest surprise and the biggest gainer was Joe Guan Yu for Sauber. After a pointless season, he finally scored points. Sauber finally scored points. It was a long time coming. They were desperate and they at least opened their account in 2024. So glad for them, glad for Joe. Don't know if we'll ever see Joe in F1 again, but he was a promising driver. This year was forgettable for him, but he's done well in the past 2 seasons. And coming back to the race in Qatar, it all went bonkers as I said. The RBs fell out of the points. That sort of ruled them out of contention for that P6 spot. Haas and Alpine were up there scoring points. Gasly got a top 5 finish, and Lando Norris, who was all set for a podium finish, he got a stop go penalty, and that changed the complexion of the championship fight. McLaren seemed all set to take the title in Qatar itself, but then that stop go penalty, yeah, that must have hurt for McLaren and Norris. And then Piastri spin in Abu Dhabi on the first lap. It just felt like the universe is conspiring together to make Ferrari champions, but it just perhaps wasn't their time yet. I hope that 2025 could be that time. Hamilton coming in as well, they will have two top drivers. Ferrari can keep their car up front. If they can be consistent and avoid a mid season slump like they had this year, next year could be Ferrari's year. And I'm surely sounding like a typical Tifosi, hoping that Ferrari does well. And it seems like the perfect situation now. Two top drivers, their car concept is going well, their form, operation, strategy, everything is coming together. They finished only 14 points behind McLaren. It's a tough pill to swallow, but that was their best in a long time. And Ferrari fans would take it. I'll take it. Everyone will take it. That heading into 2025, they can be the championship contender and they can bring home the championship with the way they are stacked up. So let's see what happens. 2025 has a lot to look forward to. 2025 could be one of the most epic seasons in F1, even better than this year. We could have multiple winners up top, multiple teams fighting for the title, and there is a lot to talk about. A lot that can happen. A lot of driver moves happening. People will have a watch on Lawson, Behrman, Antonelli. Can't really cover it all in one episode. Even for the last two races, there are several events that haven't really talked about. But yeah, it was a superb season. There's so much to talk about the 2024 season itself. Like years down the line, people will recall some of the races of this season as some of the most iconic ones. There were multiple race winners, some epic races. That's just what I like to see. Every race, throwing up a different result. So I hope that carries on into 2025 and 2026 as well. It should not be like one team is dominating in 2026. But let's see. 25 is going to be epic, that's for sure. I hope that McLaren don't go on a dominant streak. I hope Ferrari's in the fight. Red Bull is also there. Mercedes and Aston try to get back in the fight for the podiums at least. Williams will have Carlos Sainz. So can they pick up the pieces and stay in contention like Alpine have they covered this season? But yeah, before that it's a long winter break before it all resumes in Australia in mid-March. So it's a long time and I'll be looking forward to bring some throwback, some what if episodes, some feature episodes as well to talk about some of the iconic moments of this season. But yeah, until then, arigato and stay tuned.